So, I'm here to tell you today about a beach on Cape Cod that is always gray. Hello, my friends. My name is Tim Little. I am a nighttime landscape artist living on Cape Cod on the east coast of Massachusetts, and this is Cape Cod After Dark, a web series devoted to helping you find fantastic places on Cape Cod to visit, as illustrated through some of the photography that I've captured there. Now, don't let my description of a gray beach on Cape Cod fool you, because gray is actually part of the name. Let's check it out. Gray's Beach is located in Yarmouthport on the inner bay side of the Cape. It's an easy stop from either routes 6 or 6A with a good-sized parking lot. Aim your GPS for 400 Center Street. A very short walking path brings you to the beginning of an expansive boardwalk that provides fantastic views of Cape Cod Bay and the skies to the north. The boardwalk is one of the longest in the area, stretching over marshland and interesting waterways. Bring your binoculars because besides all of the kayakers, osprey, and jumping fish, you'll be able to enjoy a little lighthouse spotting thanks to the distant view of Sandy Neck lights. If the tide allows, take some time to explore beneath the boardwalk and check out those waterways passing along either side, because you never know what kind of wildlife you may discover there. At the end of the boardwalk, an overlook area is provided in the form of a wide platform. Next to the boardwalk is a boat launch area, perfect for your kayak. A few steps away is a small beach, often lifeguarded in the summer with easy access to the nearby parking lot. Just don't forget to bring your bug spray, as many areas along the inner bay can be a bit buggy at times, especially in the summer. On the other side of the parking lot is a small park to help host your Cape Vacations family picnic, or relaxing in the shade. Whether it's a sunset, sunrise, or a starry sky, Gray's Beach is your place to see all three. So last week we went to the Cape Cod Canal, which is right at the beginning of the Cape. And as you know now, we are heading to the Gray's Beach area and the boardwalk. From the canal, that is about a half an hour drive, about 22 miles from the Sagamore Bridge, coming down the Mid-Cape Highway on Route 6. Of course, if it's a Friday night in the summer, it's about 7 hours. So it might be easier for you to walk there. Those of you who have done that trip on a Friday night, you know exactly what I am talking about. Now, I mentioned earlier that this particular location is great for sunsets and sunrises and starlight. And being a night photographer, it's the starlight that I really want to talk about today. And in particular, there is one image that is, I'd say it's probably one of my more popular images, and it was a complete mistake. The one that I'm going to be showcasing today is this one, which I call Boardwalk Stars. And as I said, it was a mistake. It was an accident, I guess we could say. And the underlying lesson to this particular image is twofold. One is mistakes are okay. And the other one is never, ever, ever delete a photograph in the field because you're convinced you made a mistake. Because if I had done that, I wouldn't have had this image. So here's the story behind this particular shot. Maybe you might think that it was a beautiful, warm night. I'm going to tell you it wasn't. I look at this picture, and while some people look at it and think warm Cape Cod, happy summertime, for me, I look at this and I know that it was one of the windiest nights I'd ever experienced anywhere on the Cape in March. It was cold. I had long pants long johns, 2 pairs of socks. I had 3 layers of jacket material on. I had the full face mask and a hood. And then I had the gloves, and I use these gloves that have these they're like mittens. They have the removable top to help me press buttons on the camera. And I had a headlamp. Now, my intention was to go to this location and shoot this exact angle. I had seen it before. I knew I wanted it. And I was convinced that the conditions were going to be perfect that night. And they were. I got there. It was really nice, clear skies, which often feels like that's the case in the winter, right? You go out in the middle of a winter evening and you look up and everything looks really crisp. That's how it felt on that particular night. So imagine I've parked in the lot and I've gotten all my gear out and I set it all up to get this angle. I was shooting with the Canon 6D, which was my go-to camera before I got my Pentax. And I'm shivering and shaking and I'm just freezing my butt off there. And I start to realize that I want to get this shot. It should be pretty simple to get if I can get the symmetry lined up right. And then I just want to get out of there. And what happens when you start to rush? In any circumstance, you make mistakes. I don't normally like to use headlamps, especially if I'm out shooting with other people, because if I have the headlamp on and I turn to look at the person who is also shooting at night, I'm going to kill their night vision, which is one of the reasons I tell people who come to my workshops, try to skip the headlamp if you can, or at least have one that has like the little red lights on the top. So it's very rare that I have a headlamp, but I knew it was going to be just too darn cold to hold on to that flashlight that night and try to do other things and probably shake and knock stuff around. So I had the headlamp on. I started the exposure that I was going for, and I realized maybe a half a second into it that I had left my headlamp on. So I quickly covered the headlamp and I looked away just as quick as I could, hoping that I had not gotten any of that light into the shot. I wanted what I would call a clean shot. No lighting, just relying on whatever ambient light was happening. Well, when the camera stopped and the image popped up, this is what I got. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to save that just in case I need it for something later. And then I'll take the shot that I was going to take and go home. And I did take the other shot, which you're not seeing because in the end, the one with the lighting was a heck of a lot better. And it was a complete accident. And also, I don't think I could have done a better job lighting this than I did by quickly moving my head and trying to cover up the headlamp with my hand. Funny how that happens. And I can't tell you how many times I've been out in the field and been really tempted to erase an image. So it's just something that I don't have to deal with later. And it saves space on your memory card. But you don't ever want to do that because you may get home and decide, whether it's that night or it could be a night 5 years down the road, you may decide that you actually really, really, really like that image. Our compositional minds change, that mind's eye changes over time. And there have been a lot of images that I've gone back to revisit that I initially didn't like and either changed my mind because maybe I was just wrong back then, or I figured out a way to process it a little bit differently. So it's always good to have that. Not great if you have a computer with limited storage. You got to go out and buy extra hard drives, but it's totally worth it in those cases. Now, there is a different image that I'd like to share with you taken on a different night under completely different conditions. And I'm going to point out something, though, that is similar between the two of them. So let's have a look at that new image. This one I call Stellar Marsh. And as you can see, it is the Milky Way over one of the inlets or outlets of the marsh during high tide. So when you get out that way and it's low tide, that area just looks like some muddy paths. And I just happened to get there at the right time because that allowed me to capture some degree of a reflection of the Milky Way in the water. And also you'll notice that the grass was really green and lit. And that's for two reasons. One is I used my Proto Machines LED flashlight to just sweep across the top of the grass to give it a little bit extra kick, but it was also summer, so it was a heck of a lot warmer. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. It was the last shot I was taking on a night coming back from Nauset Lighthouse, and I figured, you know what? It's right off the highway. I'll pop in and check it out, and I was so glad that I did. But here's the thing I wanted to point out that you're going to see. In the last image and in this image, you may notice that along the horizon there's a light source, and you would not be blamed for assuming that was some sort of twilight or sunrise, but what that actually is light pollution. Unfortunately, that is something that we contend with around the Cape, unless you're shooting along the National Seashore and you're shooting east, or if you're up around Provincetown and you shoot north, because in those cases, you're pretty much just shooting straight over the ocean and there's not going to be anything else out there to produce light. But when you go to a location like this, if you aim north, like in the last shot, you would get the lights from Plymouth and Boston, believe it or not. And if you shoot west, which is exactly what I did in this shot, you're going to get the lights from on Cape, say, Hyannis, Sandwich, around the canal, and a little bit more from Plymouth. So that is something that you always have to contend with in these areas, but it's certainly worth still going out there for. And by the way, if you are a sunset photographer or you just want to go out to the boardwalk and enjoy a sunset, this is the direction that you'd be looking at, and you can see and get a really great foreground. So I would highly recommend it. This was having walked about halfway down the boardwalk, and I tried to find a little bend in the water that would make an interesting foreground, and I think it worked pretty well here. I've been up to that location maybe a dozen times, and I've been totally happy with the experience every time I've gone up there. I will give you 2 pro tips in order to make sure that you have a good time. First off, check the weather. Now, that might seem like a no-brainer, but don't just rely on it's going to be clear, it's not going to be clear. Check the wind. The wind coming off of that bay, really anywhere along that north side, the inner side of Cape Cod Bay, is like a wind tunnel. I went there one time with a client. We spent maybe 3 minutes there. We couldn't get a shot because the camera was blowing around too much, shaking. We were both worried that the tripods would just fly away. So check the wind before you go. Second, make sure you bring some bug spray. On a windy night, it's not going to matter because those bugs are just going to blow away. But unfortunately, with all that marsh around there, it gets really, really buggy quickly. So bring that bug spray. They'll be right on you as soon as you get out of your car. Here's some other images that I caught there. This was taken on the same night that I shot the original boardwalk image that you saw. Very cold, but really nice and clear. A little bit of that light pollution I mentioned. Here's that first boardwalk shot again. Same glow coming from Plymouth, just like I had mentioned in my accidental headlamp. Up there also at the end of the boardwalk is this nice seagrass, and you can graze it with a flashlight and you'll get this sort of icy effect, which really kind of reminded me of how cold I was that night. And there is a lifeguard chair up there. It's up there year round. So that's something that you can catch any time. And lifeguard chairs are a lot of fun to shoot. They're all different around the Cape, and they make really great foreground structures. We'll talk about lifeguard chairs a little bit more in a future episode and all the different things that you can do with them in a composition. I hope you enjoyed our trip to Grays Beach and the boardwalk, and I hope you get to visit that location at some point in the near future. If there is an image that you've seen from my portfolio that you would like to know more about, please let me know in the comments, and if I pick it for a future episode topic, I will send you a free 8x10 print. Hey, if you like this video, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell to be notified of future content. Thanks for watching.